Fear, procrastination. That's what's stopping most of you from pursuing your ambitions. Fear, procrastination, especially fear. So let's get straight in there, inshallah. Bismillah. Let's turn this around. Right. How to conquer fear and procrastination. Bismillah. Let's get started. Class is in session, I should say. Now, even as I sat down to write this PowerPoint, I procrastinated for a few minutes, staring blankly at the screen. Okay? When I wrote this slide, I just sat at the screen, staring for a couple of minutes. You cannot entirely eliminate procrastination from your life. The key is to get that dead time of doing nothing to as small amount as possible, to reduce it, to be consciously aware. So when I found myself spacing out into no man's land, I caught myself and I brought myself back into line. I said, yalla, crack on. So the key is to cut that dead space to as little as possible. And I'll tell you how as we progress through this presentation. Now, not all procrastination is bad. Sometimes procrastination is a good thing. Okay? Some ideas need time to incubate and mature, to gestate. It takes time. It takes time for a good idea to build in your mind. And usually, by the way, the first ideas or thoughts that you have, maybe you want to complete an assignment or whatever the case may be, you have an answer to some type of question you've been asked. Usually the first thought that comes to your mind is incomplete. It needs work. So there are rare occasions when procrastination has its advantages. It has its advantages. There is benefit in intentionally delaying. How can you tell the difference? Well, the difference you will be able to tell in how you feel. Do you feel guilty about it or not? If you feel guilty about it, this is an indication that you're procrastinating when you know you shouldn't. But if you are genuinely uncertain as to whether this thought, this idea, this answer that you have just conceived is the right one, and there's no guilt attached to it, this is an indication that you need time for the idea, the thought, the answer to incubate and mature. Procrastination in this circumstance is a good thing. You need to procrastinate. Okay, overcoming bad procrastination. I've got here the exercise oxygen deficit versus the work ethic deficit. Now, in marathon runners, you experience something called an exercise oxygen deficit. That is, when you start exercise, any cardiovascular exercise, the first few minutes of your workout, you're massively out of breath. For those of you who do exercise regularly, cardiovascular exercise, running on a treadmill, rowing, whatever the case may be, you can relate to this. The first few minutes feel really hard, right? And then suddenly you get your groove going. What's going on here? Well, in a physical sense, what's happening is it takes time for the body to replenish the oxygenated blood that is being used to fuel this exercise. It basically takes time to oil the gears. That's all you need to know. Once the gears are oiled, the oxygenated blood can refill those muscles quickly and easily. And that's why it no longer feels like super hard work. It feels like, okay, I can carry on now. Those first few minutes are the hardest. The fitter you get, the shorter your exercise oxygen deficit. The average man, the average woman has an exercise oxygen deficit time of 5 minutes. It takes around 5 minutes to get your oxygen levels in the blood, in the muscles, back to normal. Around 5 minutes. For elite marathon runners, it takes them 30 seconds. 30 seconds, and they're past that exercise oxygen deficit. How do you become an elite marathon runner in terms of work ethic? Practice. By continually pushing through those first few minutes of difficulty, eventually you will get fitter. Your work ethic will get fitter. Your work ethic will get fitter, and the exercise oxygen deficit will be diminished dramatically. But that requires you, just like when you first start working out, you've just got to push through it. There's no way around it. There is no cheat code to becoming supremely fit like a Paula Radcliffe. Equally, there's no cheat code to becoming very productive. You just have to grind through it, and then eventually that exercise oxygen deficit time will diminish and decrease. Fear. You can interpret it in two ways. Forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. I know it's corny, but it's the truth. Now, there's different types of fear. When it comes to fear, we fear a number of things, or pursuing your ambitions. One of those is fear of criticism. We don't want to be ostracized from the group. We don't want to feel like we're not normal. We don't want to feel like we're doing something different. But ask yourself this. If you are doing the same activities, pursuing the same hobbies, watching the same programs as your average friends, and you fear that by doing something different, they will ostracize you, they will look at you weird, they'll say bad things about you. Well, I've got news for you. If you do the same as them, you're going to end up like them. You will end up like them. So bear that in mind when you have a fear of doing something different because of what the people will say. And I've got a slide on whom to take advice from shortly. Envy is often disguised in the sheepskin of criticism. Your breaking of the mold intimidates, unsettles, and arouses insecurities. When you decide to pursue a different path to what your family have typically done or what your friends are doing, you arouse insecurities in that person. They say to themselves, this person's doing something different. What if he or she genuinely makes it? How's that going to make me feel? I'm going to feel really small. I'm going to feel really like a failure. So people express that envy through criticism, try and pull you back. I heard recently that if you have a bucket of crabs, sometimes one crab will try to escape. The rest of the crabs will gather together and pull the leg of that crab trying to escape. Equally, when you're trying to escape your situation for the better, the crabs around you will try and pull you down so that you stay the same as them. Because you succeeding shines a brighter light on their failures. If you succeed against all the odds, it's a reminder to everyone else that, oh, maybe we should have done better with our lives. It's a reminder to them. And that arouses insecurities and envy, and they just don't want to go through that. They'd rather everyone around them fails. That's easier to deal with. Easier to pull people down than to build yourself up. That's what it boils down to. Your rejection of conventional ways is an insult to them. This is another point. They think to themselves, what? Do you think you're better than us? So when you are pursuing a different path, you're pursuing your ambitions, you're doing something different, you are basically giving a middle finger to tradition, the traditional path. Maybe all of your family went to university and you decided uni's not for me. I want to pursue my entrepreneurial endeavors. Maybe it's that. Immediately the family are like, what? Do you think you're better than us? Is that what it is? You're looking down on us. You're sneering at us. You're sneering at those who go to university. You think you're better than us. So you arouse that type of insecurity as well. And the best advice I can give you is to not look down and sneer upon conventional ways, even if you feel it in your heart. Even if you feel it in your heart that it's stupid to go to university or whatever the case may be, don't express it. Keep it to yourself, because you will make a ton of enemies needlessly. Keep it to yourself. If you want to educate people, but do so without emotion. Don't attach your emotion to it, because then you'll make those loved ones around you, you'll make them feel insecure, and then you'll really get on the bad end of them. So be careful. Don't be so vain. Nobody is thinking about you. This is another point. We often prevent ourselves from pursuing something because we're worried what people will say. But for the most part, I got news for you, man. People are not thinking about me and you. Most people spend 99% of their day wrapped up in their own problems. Do not be so vain as to think that they, whoever they is thinking about you. Habibi, Habibti, they're not. Don't be so vain. Everyone's got their own problems. They're probably not thinking about you anyway. And even when they do, it's for a fleeting moment, and then you've left their minds again. We spend all this time worrying about what people will think, and all the while they're not thinking about us. You don't believe me? How much time do you spend thinking about the next person? That's the litmus test. How much time do you spend thinking about, oh, this guy here, he thinks he's so great. He thinks he's doing that. What an idiot. How much time do you spend doing that? Likelihood is you spend most of your time worrying about your own problems. Most people are the same. They're not thinking about me. They're not thinking about you. So don't allow your actions to be dictated by people who are not even thinking about you. Okay? The cost of fear. What's the heavy price you must pay for not pursuing your ambitions? Okay? And in fact, that's a perfect segue onto one of the regrets of the dying. From a book that I've read here, I'm going to pull it out for you. This book here, I mentioned it in my lives previously. The top 5 regrets of the dying. The first regret in that book is, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. And in that first chapter, there's a story of an elderly woman called Grace, who put off pursuing her ambitions, telling herself she would do it in old age. Once the time came, so her husband was a chain smoker and he would smoke in the house. Finally, he was hospitalized in a care home and he needed full-time care. So now some time opened up for her to pursue her ambitions. But guess what happened? She became so sick from passive smoking that she actually contracted a fatal sickness herself. Passive smoking, by the way, is more dangerous than actual smoking the cigarette itself. And she was so heartbroken. Like, you can feel the emotion in the book. She was so heartbroken. She was so upset that she had waited her whole life to pursue this ambition, only to find out at the end of it that she had contracted this life-altering sickness from passive smoking, from inhaling the fumes that her husband would smoke. That's mad. What's the cost of you not pursuing your ambition? How much regret will you feel at the end of your lifetime? Okay, you want to live a conventional life, but there's a price to be paid. There's a price to be paid pursuing your ambitions, and there's a price to be paid for not. Don't ever think there's not a price to be paid. Don't ever think that. There is always a price to be paid. This way or that way, you must pay a price. If you decide to swim upstream, pursue your ambitions, break the mold, break conventional ways, there's a price to be paid. Criticism, insecurity for a period of time, on and on. But if you decide to go the conventional route and to do things as everyone else did, there is also a price to be paid. And that price is you hating yourself once you get towards the end of your life. Which price is heavier? The temporary price of criticism, ostracism perhaps, being laughed at and so on, or the permanent price of you hating yourself at the end of your lifetime? For me, that's an easy answer. Rejection from loved ones is hard. It is hard being rejected by those who are closest to you. They cause you to doubt yourself because their advice is something we take quite heavily. Our loved ones, our parents, our sisters and so on, we don't want to feel like they don't like us, they don't accept us because they are us. It's our blood. We don't want to feel like they're rejecting us. But you have to ask yourself, you have to question the source of advice and where it's coming from. Okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say your father or your mother is giving you advice. Don't start this new business. Don't do that. I ask you, is she or he a successful businessman or businesswoman? Does she have experience in business? If the answer to that is yes, maybe you should take that advice on board. She has experience. He has experience. If they have no experience in business, they have no clue what they're talking about when it comes to starting startups or online business and so on, then that advice should be taken with a pinch of salt because it's probably coming from a place of fear, their own personal fears, and nothing to do with genuine, solid advice that you should consider. Always question the source of advice and where it comes from. Remember the golden rule. Only take advice from those you are willing to trade places with. And that will change from one person to the next. You would go to a scholar to seek religious advice. But if the scholar is poor, he's not earning much money, you don't seek business advice from the scholar unless it's a matter related to the deen. Is this halal? Is that haram? And so on. But other than that, you don't seek business advice from him. You go to a businessman, you ask him for business advice. But if he's not practicing Muslim, you don't ask him for religious advice. On and on. Always consider the source that you are getting your advice from. And only trade places with those. Take advice from those you are willing to trade places with. We fear what we have not clearly identified. This is very important. What is unclear scares us. If you clearly identify what the worst case scenario could be and write it down on paper, it's never as scary as your mind makes it out to be. I cannot emphasize this point enough, and I learned it from an entrepreneur by the name of Sharon Srivatsa. He's an Indian immigrant. He lives in America. And he said, whenever you fear taking action, write down that fear on paper. The moment you write it out on paper, it loses its power over you. Because what we are actually scared of is the unknown in our heads. The unknown is magnified. When we haven't clearly identified the source of the fear, it's magnified in our minds. It becomes bigger, it blows up. And we're like, we can't put our finger on it. But the moment you write it out, it loses all its power and you can see it for what it is. And most of the time, it's not even that bad. Most of the time, it's not even that bad. Right. Okay, and before I move to that one, actually, always ask yourself, what is the worst case scenario? If you can identify the worst case scenario, this will help you tremendously when it comes to making decisions with regards to pursuing at your ambitions. I'll give you an example. Roger Federer, he was asked, how does he deal with high pressure situations in tennis? I believe it was Roger Federer. When it comes to like match point in tennis, for example, how do you deal with the heaviness of serving for a championship? How do you deal with that? And he said, what I do is I always play out the worst case scenario. I tell myself, what's the worst thing that will happen if I miss this point and as a result of that lose the match? Will I die? No. Will I get some type of life-crippling illness? No. Will I lose all my money? No. So the only thing that will change is I don't win this tournament. Aside from that, nothing else changes. He said that right there lifts so much pressure from me once I realize and identify that it's just the game. It's just the game. That's what it is. I'm losing the game and that's pretty much it. Nothing else changes. Once you can identify what it is you are going to actually lose for what it is, it loses its power over you. Narrow your group of friends and be a loner. I can't emphasize this enough. Be a loner. Yes. You'll find most successful people, by the way, they tend to be quite lonely. And that's because, well, especially the hyper successful, there's not many who operate on their wavelength. But in general, it's always a good idea to keep your circle of friends to a very, very small number. Your circle of friends should be small. You should be able to count them on one hand, those friends that you are in frequent, regular contact with. Because you need to be selective, highly selective in who you're taking as friends, as companions, because they have a massive influence. What choice do you have anyway? And I speak now specifically to the men because the burden of performance is upon us. It is upon us to perform. You don't have a choice in this. This is not optional. The burden of performance is upon us. Embrace and thrive or reject this advice and be ignored. I get a lot of brothers, brother, I want to get married, but her father is not interested in me and he said no and so on. Okay, well, level up. Oh, but brother, okay, fine, make excuses then. This is real. Oh, but he should get. I'm a practicing brother. He should give it to me. Okay, I agree. Yes, Prophet ﷺ said, if he's a practicing man, he's a righteous man. His deen is good to you. You find his deen good. Marry your daughter to him. Yep, I'm with you. I agree. Deal with reality. The reality is this: most fathers are not going to give their daughters to you if they don't see something of substance in you, some type of, substance, some type of something. So level up, pursue ambitious goals and then go out and achieve them. Because if you don't have options. Especially as men, when you pursue your ambitions and you achieve, you have options. That's it. That's what it boils down to. You have more options. You got more options of houses to buy, more options of cars to choose from, and more options of women to marry. Pursue your ambitions, make a success out of them, and you will have options. Or don't have options. Choice is yours. Now, before I share the one secret, and there is one secret, and it's summarized in a single sentence, to conquer fear and procrastination, we're going to take a brief segue here. Because I am hosting my first ever masterclass that will be in 2 weekends' time, inshallah ta'ala. And it's called Power, Wealth and Women, the High Value Muslim Man. And this is just for the men. It's a private masterclass that we will be running on the 11th to the 13th of June. Okay? Now, what are we going to be covering in this module? Well, it can be summarized in this single sentence here by Robert Greene. A man's self-esteem is intimately tied to his sense of power, control, and respect for his opinions. And I know a lot of people have an issue with the word power and an issue with the word control. So let's break that down. If power and control are bad, then being out of control and powerless must be good. Think about it. If we are to say that having power and being in control is a bad thing, then it means being out of control and powerless is a good thing. This is simply not the case. Having power and being in control of your circumstance is eminently beneficial. It is brilliant. It's beautiful. It's something we should all aspire to, particularly as men. And that is what we are going to be breaking down in this course, in this masterclass, this 2-day masterclass from the 11th to the 13th of June. So, I have a few questions for you, gentlemen. Do you feel powerless in your life right now? Do you crave recognition for your unique skills and your talents? Do you wish you knew how to negotiate the best deal for yourself in any situation, whether it's a business deal, whether it's a negotiation with a woman, whether it's a negotiation with your parents? It doesn't matter. Life is an ongoing series of negotiations. Do you wish you knew the secrets to commanding the respect of women in an intimate relationship? Do you wish you knew how to make millions in real estate without resorting to interest? And I think this will interest the gentleman the most. Do you wish you could get first-hand financial solutions from a real estate mogul who has over £25 million worth of property in his portfolio and is only 28 years old? And I should say, he is responsible for £25 million worth of property. His family, the family portfolio, has over £250 million in property value on their portfolio, in their books. They deal with Middle Eastern billionaires in particular. This guy is incredibly successful in the real estate game. And on top of that, no riba, no interest. He is a practicing Muslim man. That's my connection. That's who I'm going to be bringing to this masterclass. And there is no better business to get into than real estate. When all is said and done, if technology dies, if Bitcoin disappears, guess what? Me and you, we still need a roof over our heads. It has always been the best business to get into. Always. And this individual, I can't reveal his identity right now, has this on lock. Right. What we will be studying, the first module we will be studying, the essential laws of power and influence. And I have broken down, what I've done is I've digested the most important laws from Robert Greene's book, The 48 Laws of Power. And I will be teaching them on this course. And I'll tell you something about power. Let me tell you something about power. Power is less about getting more power and more about not losing the power you already have. I cannot tell you how many mistakes me and you make on a daily basis that result in us losing the power we already have. We make stupid mistakes in the workplace, at home, with family, with our kids, with our parents, and it causes us to needlessly lose the power we already have. This is the biggest problem that we have. It's not even about getting more power, although that's important. It's more about not losing the power we already have through stupid blunders. Give you an example. Okay. Law 1 in the 48 Laws of Power. You can see it here. It talks about never outshine the master. When you have a mentor, a teacher, a master, and you show how brilliant you are, you want to show him how amazing you are. You want to show off your skills, your boss at work. You want to show how amazing you are at what you do. Guess what you're doing? You're arousing insecurities in your boss that one day you might take his place. Do you know what he's going to do next? He's going to make sure you are isolated from the group, and he will even go out of his way to fire you. I have first-hand experience of this. When I was a teacher in Saudi Arabia, English teacher, I was the joint best teacher in the school. 2 weeks later, I was fired. Now, maybe there were other reasons, perhaps, I don't know. But one thing I know for sure is I was the best teacher. The best, and I was fired. Never outshine the master. Dim your colors when you are dealing with a superior. If you don't, you will pay the price. Another perfect example of needlessly losing power. Other laws we will be studying. Learn how to keep people dependent upon you. Cultivate an air of mystery and unpredictability, and do not commit to anyone. And I can't explain those laws to you right now. And there'll be more. We'll be studying 11 in total. And that's why I've written this sentence here. So much of power and influence is not about gaining more of it, but simply not losing what we already have through stupid blunders. Stupid blunders. Second module. The subtle art of shark level negotiation. How to negotiate a higher salary. Sitting in the silence. What does that mean? Calibrated questions. Violent agreement. Black swans. Violent agreement is when two parties are disagreeing with each other on a point where they fundamentally agree. It's the stupidest thing, and we do it all the time. Black swans are hidden gems of information that can completely transform a negotiation, turn it around for you completely, and then getting the best deal for you. Right. Third module, taming the lioness. This comes down to dealing specifically with women. The dynamics, the interrelationship dynamics of dealing with women. The danger in having children with red flag women and how to identify them. How social media has changed the game and what to do about it. Why is jealousy a good thing? Why are women only attracted to one type of man? Decoding the mysterious psychology of female communication. And becoming a man that women flock to for a chance to be with you. I will say it again. Becoming a man that women flock to for a chance to be with you. For their chance to be with you. Yes, you heard that right. So what that means is you're going to be studying the essential laws of power. You will master the subtle art of shark level negotiation, and you will understand how to tame the lioness without getting into needless fights and needless problems. Next, and this is the one that you will probably be most interested in. It's the one I'm certainly most interested in. Empire. Financial solutions with a property magnate. His portfolio is in excess of £25 million. And I'll read you this quote here by Anthony Robbins. And it goes as follows. The lesson: you are never going to earn your way to financial freedom. The real route to riches is to set aside a portion of your money and invest it so that it compounds over many years. That's how you become wealthy whilst you sleep. The problem is most of us don't know how to invest or where to invest. We don't know how. Bitcoin this, cryptocurrency that. You're gambling. Most of us are gambling with our money, with our hard-earned money. We're gambling it away on investments that never pay. Why not get advice from someone who can actually show you how he did it in real estate without riba, without interest? Right. So, highlights. This will be a private masterclass with a maximum of 8 members. Okay? We'll be conducting this in a 5-star hotel. 2 nights in the hotel are included in this. In a 5-star hotel, maximum 8 members, because that's all the hotel has said that I can bring. I'm not allowed to bring any more than 8 members because of social distancing rules. Dinner with me on the second night as well. And intimate access to a real estate mogul with over £25 million in his portfolio at just the age of 28. You see, I didn't want to bring someone who was like 60 plus because I know that's not very relatable. Most guys will be like, yeah, well, if I get to 60, I might have that. It's much more relatable when you can connect with someone who's in your age bracket. 28 years old, and he's already made it. He's a made man at 28. That's who's going to be coming down. Him alone, on his own, he justifies the investment of the course completely. Just that time with him. Right. Okay, cost. Let's talk about cost. How much will a failed marriage, a divorce, losing your children in a nasty, drawn-out custody battle, just like I did, cost you, gentlemen? What cost will that have on your children? What type of cost will that be to you? Let's talk the financial cost aside. What's the cost of marrying a woman who was not the right woman for you, or perhaps there were problems with you? That's also a possibility. And now as a result of that, you have to go your separate ways, and you lose your kids, and you lose half of all of that you have made in terms of your wealth and so on. What's the cost of that? How do you quantify it? Here I put a picture here of my 2 children. That's on my 2 children. 2 pictures here of my children. Yeah, subhanAllah, even seeing it makes my heart heavy. These kids here, Kareem, Juwaidia, Ismail, Abdurrahman. For the past few years, I have hardly seen them. Especially these 2. I've hardly seen them. And subhanAllah, it's this is why I do this, man, because I don't want you guys to fall into the same traps that I fell into. You don't know the pain that is involved in not being able to see your children. You don't know that pain. You don't know what it feels like to not have access to your children. It's like a piece of you, like your limb is constantly detached from you. But it doesn't heal. There's no healing because it's your limb. And it only feels better once you're with them. And when you're not with them that often, single fathers, you know what I'm talking about, those who have lost their kids, you're going through that pain constantly. I don't want that for you. Every morning, I read my definite major purpose. It's a statement. It's a mission statement of what I am doing and why I'm doing it. Part of that mission statement is to help, to direct, to guide men how to avoid pairing with red flag women. How to avoid pairing with them, and also how to correct themselves. Because the problem might be you, my friend. It might not be her. You don't want to be in a situation where you're not living with your kids anymore. It is devastating in the extreme. I cannot emphasize it enough. And that's the cost of making these stupid mistakes, these stupid blunders. You can't put a price on it. You can't put a number on it. So, gentlemen, how much will it cost you in lost pounds, lost money on the table because you never learned how to negotiate? And I'm going to give you a story now of a company called Pearl Investments. Pearl Investments, they had a real estate portfolio, and part of their portfolio they wanted to sell for the price of, they wanted to get $48 million for it. Okay, that was the top end that they wanted. The bottom end of what they were willing to accept was $42 million. They came into contact with another company called Estate One. Estate One was another real estate company who were interested in buying this plot of land. The two companies sent representatives from their individual organizations to sit down at the negotiating table and hammer out a price. Pearl Investments wanted as close to 48 million as possible. Estate One would want obviously a bargain, as little as possible. Pearl Investments, they lay down the gauntlet, and they put a high anchor price. They say, we want $46 million for this piece of land. If you want it, you're gonna have to pay us $46 million. To their surprise, Estate One instantly accepted the deal. And Pearl Investments was like, huh, what? Why the hell did they accept that so quick? That wasn't so hard. Pearl Investments went away feeling good but confused. It just so happened that Estate One did not intend on building residential properties on that land. They intended on building, and the word leaves my mind right now. Begins with a C. Anyway, if they weren't going to build residential properties, they were going to build, they had taken that land for commercial development. That's the word I was looking for. That land, if you built on it commercially, is worth double than what it was worth as a residential. It was worth closer to $80 million. You know how much Pearl Investment left on the table? They left $30 million on the table. Why? Because they did not know how to negotiate properly. Now, you might be sat there thinking, but how could they tell? How could they know that Estate One wanted to purchase this piece of land for commercial uses? There's a way to find out. There's a way to find out information that you cannot find out otherwise. There is a way to do it. That is the art of negotiating like a shark. And that is what we will cover in that module. That's how much it costs. $32 million is how much they left on the table, simply because they didn't know how to extract that black swan of information. And that's what I will be teaching you. Okay, also the cost. I like this picture, I don't know if you can see it. What's the cost of living paycheck to paycheck and never having enough money to live comfortably without having to continually work for the rest of your life? And I don't know if you can see this here, but this fat dude here, he's got this guy on a treadmill, and it says, "What fools wage slaves be." That's the reality of working a 9 to 5 for the rest of your life, is that you're running on this treadmill on the same spot, chasing that bag right there for the rest of your life, dangling that carrot, but never truly having true financial freedom, peace, security, peace of mind. And again, That's why I have brought down this real estate mogul, 28 years old, with a property portfolio of £25 million on his books. That's what he's responsible for. His family's portfolio, 250 million. And they started from nothing. From nothing. This was not inherited. They started from nothing. Financial education. So to go over again, what you will master: the essential laws of power and influence, the subtle art of negotiating like a shark, taming the lioness, and then empire. How to build your own empire, becoming the high-value Muslim man. Now, the investment is subject to passing qualification criteria. If you want to participate in this weekend event, you will have to pass a series of questions first. I'm not bringing on a certain type of individual. There's a very specific type of individual that I'm looking to bring on in this course. So if you want to learn more, if you want to find out more about this course, DM me and I will send you this list of questions and you can find out from there, inshallah, if you meet the qualification criteria or not. Now, moving on to the one thing. The one thing, if you do this, if you can master this, if you can accept this and make peace with it, you will be able to conquer fear and procrastination, specifically fear. The one thing you must do to conquer fear and procrastination is become comfortable in the cesspit of ridicule and feeling of humiliation. I'll read it one more time for you. Become comfortable in the cesspit of ridicule and feeling of humiliation. When you pursue the path less trodden, you are going to be humiliated. You are going to be insulted. You are going to be mocked. You are going to be ridiculed. It's part and parcel of pursuing any endeavor, any path that is less trodden. Pursuing the path less trodden comes at a price, and that price is a short-term period of being ridiculed and you yourself feeling humiliated. That's the price that must be paid. Get used to it. And in fact, I will say the following. If you are being ridiculed, firstly and foremostly by outsiders, and then you feel inside humiliated because of this ridicule that's coming your way, that's a great sign. This is an indication that you are pursuing the path less trodden because nobody would pay attention to you otherwise. Take that as a good omen, not an omen, as a glad tiding, as a good sign. So we will end the presentation by repeating it one more time. Become comfortable in the cesspit of ridicule and feeling of humiliation. And on that note, I will end this live. For those of you who want to find out more about the weekend masterclass, feel free to DM me. We'll take it from there. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.